Now, with us this morning to take a look at the papers are Emma Wolfe and Lucy Beresford. Good morning to you both. Thanks for joining us. Let's get straight to it, shall we? We're starting with the Sunday Express, and they're reporting on a fury over taxpayers' money being used to fund organisations kind of fighting plans to remove asylum seekers from Rwanda. Emma, I'll start with you on your thoughts on this.
Yeah, well, this is more bad news for the government's sort of beleaguered immigration plan. Absolutely. The Express are claiming that £1.5 billion of taxpayer money has been handed to organisations who are actually fighting the government's own deportation scheme. So this follows the recent Court of Appeal ruling, which was that the Rwanda policy is unlawful. And the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, has been responding, pretty much saying nothing, just saying our commitment to stopping the boats is as strong as ever, which we already know from Rishi Sunak. So the cash is being branded taxpayer-funded anti-government propaganda on a global scale. And this is, as I say, more bad news for the government, more bad news for Rishi Sunak, who is not having a good time of it at the moment. He's obviously had awful inflation news, awful economic news lately, and now, probably bad by-elections looming. And now one of his own key policies, one of his stated 5 key pledges about stopping the small boats seems to be floundering.
Indeed, and not a single plane has taken off, so we shall see where that story takes us. Lucy, you have picked out, it's one of these stories that sort of takes your breath away, really. They're reporting, The Observer, that 10,000 people have been killed by asbestos in schools. And they've really detailed, haven't they, case studies, heartbreaking case studies of people who have then developed cancer and sadly died.
Yes, I think that might be on the front page of the Times.
Yes, it's a Sunday Times, sorry.
Yes, and on the front page of The Observer, they're also looking at another story, which is incredibly head-spinning, which is about how the water companies appear to be taking their heads of staff from Ofwat, as if there is a revolving door from the regulator into these companies where the pay is obviously greatly improved. And I think in both those stories, the story about the asbestos, which is talking about how many schools are still in existence, despite the fact that there are high levels of asbestos in their building structure. And the Sunday Times is actually saying perhaps there ought to be a national register that identifies where these buildings are, but clearly that hasn't been done. So you wonder why that hasn't been done. And similarly with the story on the Observer front page about the water companies, you can understand why if you were a headhunter and you were trying to recruit someone to run a water company, you would want to go to someone who had experience with that industry and who perhaps had an understanding of the terminology and good contacts. So that's not particularly surprising. But the problem is this comes in the week that Thames Water's finances are under intense scrutiny because they have extremely high levels of debt. The chief executive has had to stand down. We've got an interim CEO taking the helm, a joint CEO, and it's this person that is on the front page of The Observer as being someone who has gone apparently from Ofwat now to the head of Thames Water. So both those stories doesn't really look good for the industries themselves.
No, and lots of people, worried about those bills, the 40% rise in water bills, just as energy prices and bills are going down. Lucy, thank you so much for doubling up on those 2 stories there. Emma, should we talk about the Mail and police pride? What's going on with that story?
Can I just come in on the asbestos story? Because it's
of course, yes, please.
Really, that's the one I haven't seen the police pride one, but the asbestos story was it's actually bigger than we realise. We all know about asbestos, but it's actually the #1 work-related killer in this country. It's actually, the UK has the highest mortality rate from mesothelioma in this country. People are dying, around 10,000 known to have died, but many, many more will have died from lung cancer, that may or may not be linked to that. Since the 1980s, 10,000 children and staff are estimated to have died from exposure to asbestos since the 1980s. And that's mesothelioma, asbestosis, and, as I say, lung cancer. And the dangerous thing about asbestos is that it's sort of inert. It's okay while it's hidden, while it's not disturbed, while it's intact in buildings. But once you start to try and remove it, or buildings start to crumble, or they start to, once it's exposed, that's when it becomes very dangerous. And as Lucy points out, there are many, many children, according to the Sunday Times, really important investigation and their campaign called the Hidden Asbestos Time Bomb. Many children will now be attending schools where there is still asbestos within the walls. I'm sure people are still attending workplaces, buildings, libraries, museums, whatever, with asbestos still in the cladding, in the walls, in the roofs of our buildings. And that's what's really, really frightening.
No, thank you for shining a light on that. It worth the extra comments there. And you did pick out, didn't you, Emma, this story about the Met Police and Pride and being banned from wearing badges that commemorates those officers that have fallen.
Well, actually, Lucy picked that out. It was.
Gosh, I'm having a nightmare today.
You've swapped us over.
Yeah, I've swapped you over.
You've swapped us over, but Lucy has prepared all about police and pride.
So let's go for it.
Pride, the big parade took place in London yesterday, and it looked like an incredibly successful and high-spirited and well-meaning event. But behind the scenes, it turns out that Met police officers were told to not display a badge that many of them wear, which is called the Thin Blue Line. It's a black and white Union Jack flag with a thin blue line through the middle, as it says on the tin. And for the police officers, it commemorates the colleagues that they've lost in action, and it's a badge that they wear with great pride in memory of many of their colleagues. Unfortunately, there's a similar badge. It could be identical, I'm not sure, which has been used in America by some anti-trans activists. And as a result, the Met Police said to their officers, please don't wear this badge because it could inflame the LGBTQ plus community, which further in the article inside the Daily Mail, it's very clear that spokespeople for those groups are saying that that's not the case. In fact, we're incredibly supportive of the police wearing this badge. Apparently, across other police forces in the country, there is an element of discretion about whether you are allowed to wear it or not. But very few police forces actually say to their officers, don't wear this badge. And as you can imagine, the police officers themselves are incredibly frustrated and upset by this.
Certainly. Let's move on to a couple of lighter stories now that you've picked out. And I want to start, this is in the Daily Star, and it says, boozed up Hornets on the rampage. Is there any more to say on that, Emma?
Well, if you're heading for a beer garden or a pub or a lovely party, you might be interested in this one. I've never chosen a Star front page before. Apparently, we're facing an invasion of Asian alcoholic hornets, according to the boffins and the boffinesses.
Okay.
They love their favourite drink. These horrible creatures, flying critters. Their favourite tipple is beer and bubbly, and it makes you want to go be total.
Wow. Do you know what? For once, I have no words on that story. So we will end this paper review, Lucy, on a story that you picked out. This is The Sun on Sunday, and two, unlikely friends.
Yes, this follows, this is a story about Ellie Goulding, the singer, and Zach Goldsmith, the eco-activist, who stepped down from his position in government earlier this week. A couple of days ago, it was announced that Ellie Goulding and her her husband, Casper Jopling, have been leading separate lives for the last 6 months. They got married about 4 years ago. So this is the next installment of the story. It's quite hard to work out from the Sun article what we're really being encouraged to think about this, because on the one hand, there is a recommendation to just say that they're very good friends and that Ellie Goulding is going to be supported by Zach.
Okay.
And then later it
friends.
says, yes, that there is no sign of a romance. They are very explicit about that. So presumably that phase of the story will come out a bit later.
And then I suppose waking up to a friendship, whatever you want to call it, on the front page of a tabloid. I suppose, Emma, it's not what you want to do you, on a Sunday morning? But here it is.
This kind of speculation is really unhelpful, and there is a young baby involved as well.
Yeah.
So it's obviously, you know how the Sun, well, you know how many of the papers like to talk about special friends. So being supported through their marriage breakup. If they decided to keep this breakup on the quiet, there's a reason for that, and that was for their own privacy and their own family. But it's difficult because celebrities also trade on the fame and on the exposure. So
Yeah,
you don't get to pick and choose when you get your privacy.
No, this is true. Emma, Lucy, thank you so much for your company, and also special thanks for bearing with me there at the top of the paper review. We'll chat with you in the next hour, so hold tight. Thank you so much. Well, this is Sky News Breakfast. Thanks for your company so far. In the next hour, we'll be talking about the riots in France and the fallout from that. So stay with Sky News Breakfast. More after the break.